Today, I'd like to explain how I might brainstorm an argumentative essay. Contrary to popular belief, brainstorming really isn't a strange activity designed by teachers to torture poor, helpless students. Brainstorming, in fact, is widely used in many professional fields. For example, a property developer might have an engineer, an architect, an accountant, a local expert of some sort, a biologist, and many more people sitting around a table brainstorming what is possible for a development project. Many people like to say that there should be no criticism at this stage, but I find that hard to do, and I don't really think that it's a good idea. I want to question, to doubt, to object, to suggest alternatives. Perhaps it's better to say that we shouldn't be overly critical. We don't want to shut down other people's creativity, but the reality is we do want to respond to other people's ideas. Things that are thrown out in a brainstorming session often trigger other ideas, sometimes opposing ideas. The purpose of the activity is to get all of the ideas out in the open where they can be examined critically later. In formal brainstorming sessions, there's usually a recorder who writes everything down. Brainstorming is helpful too in writing an essay. You should begin with a piece of paper and something to write with. It's really helpful to work with other students. You should make sure to write all the ideas down. Brainstorming should be seen as that time at the beginning of the writing process when you relax, let your imagination run free. Try not to be too critical of any idea, just write everything down. Now, sometimes for an essay, the topic is given and you don't have a lot of choice. In this case, make sure you understand the topic and stick to it. Sometimes, as with this class, you have more freedom. You can generally choose any topic you want. However, it needs to be an issue, something that a significant number of people disagree about. Think about topics that you might find interesting, perhaps things that you argue with your friends about. Write them down. What are those topics? Who is involved? Why are they involved? How do they act? Where does it take place? Is there a cause and effect? Is there a problem and a solution? What will happen if nothing is done? What will happen if something is done? I might want to write about women's rights, willful ignorance, nuclear energy, necessary changes to the educational system, censorship, capital punishment, our responsibility for climate change, the government's role in creating jobs, quotas in hiring, amortization. These are all things that I find interesting. It doesn't matter which method of brainstorming you use. I'm going to discuss two methods here, clustering and listing. You can use one or both. You can use them in combination if you want. If you have your own method, use that. The important thing is to get your ideas out in the open and write them down. Often when I brainstorm, I write my ideas down as though I'm talking to myself. Sometimes it's helpful to brainstorm 2 or 3 different topics to see which one you think would make the best essay. I generally like creating clusters or webs, but you don't have to do this if this isn't how you think. If you're going to do your brainstorming on a computer or tablet, clustering is tedious and time-consuming, and I don't recommend it. I usually write my topic as a word or phrase in the middle of the page. For example, willful ignorance. I think that educated people often deliberately ignore things that they don't want to have to deal with. I think that people often confuse what they want with what they need. I think too that because of the internet and other sources of information, we have no excuse for not knowing about problem areas in our behavior. Then I think of general topics related to this idea. For example, smoking, pollution, diet, overpopulation. Once I have a rough idea of what main points might fit with the topic, I start to think of smaller details. Overwhelming evidence of the harm of smoking, the danger to smokers, non-smokers, whether they are children or adults, the diseases that might arise from smoking, things like cancer, emphysema. I think about the cost to society. There's a cost in lost work. What about widows and orphans? There is medical care costs for society. Then I might, if I've finished with smoking, move on to pollution and compare the pollution 10 years ago to today. I might think about what the future would be like for the children. What's the effect of pollution on climate change? What about air pollution, water pollution, land pollution? Who's doing it? Is it industry? Should they be controlled by the government? What about individuals? We have big cars. We have air cons that are running all the time and making the air too cold. Sometimes it's so cold we open windows and doors. We waste water. We have long showers. We let the water run while we're brushing our teeth. We need to think about where the water is coming from. I think about diet and overeating, obesity, heart disease, diabetes, the high calories that are in the food that we eat. Sometimes I think we eat too much meat, too much fast food, junk food. It has too few nutrients. I think about overpopulation, overcrowding in cities, unemployment and underemployment. We see uprisings in the Middle East that are at least partly because of the high rates of unemployment and underemployment. We have water shortages because of overpopulation, shortages of drinking water and shortages of irrigation water for crops, food shortages as a result of overpopulation, high prices, overfishing. Once I've done that, then I need to think, which one might I want to do first? And I might go back and number them and say that smoking, I might do that one first. Diet, I might do that one first. I would look at these because these are things that we all do all the time. They are all related to our daily activities. I might include pollution in this as well. And overpopulation I might do at the end because it's the largest and it's not really something that we do or think about on a daily basis. If you want to make lists, that's fine too. If I'm working on a computer, this is probably how I would do it. I might think about nuclear energy and why we would need nuclear energy, and generally I indent and number things as I'm doing it. I might think about shortage of fossil fuel. Where would we put nuclear energy? Are there geological concerns, earthquakes, tidal waves, things like that? Wind direction, so if there's an accident, where would the fallout go? What would be the cost of building the power plant, the cost for the fuel, maintenance, production of electricity, the cost of dismantling the power plant after 40 to 45 years, disposal of fuel. What about safety issues in the operation, natural disasters, earthquakes, tsunamis? What about regulations? Who's going to enforce them? Are there natural safe levels of radiation? I may not know this. I might have to do some research. Are there alternatives? We might try just to reduce our energy needs with public transportation, better insulation, hybrid cars. We might look at renewable energy, solar, wind, tide, bio. We might look at climate change, carbon emissions being reduced because of nuclear energy. There could be development issues in types of nuclear energy that we are using. Once I've made my list, I can go back and add some things in. Once I've finished my brainstorming, I need to make a decision. I need to decide which topic I'm going to write about. I want to write a clear, strong thesis statement. I state the topic in a word or a phrase, and I complete my statement by saying what I'm thinking about that topic. For example, educated people in developed countries are shockingly, dangerously, willfully ignorant. This is a thesis statement. Nuclear energy, this is my topic, should only be used as a last resort. People everywhere must do more to protect women from violence and harassment. These are three good, clear, strong thesis statements. They are argumentative. When you write your thesis statement, remember, do not make an announcement. Don't say, I want to tell you about nuclear energy. This is not a good thesis statement. Say something like, nuclear energy is an essential form of energy for any country. Don't say, this essay will explain the reasons why smoking should be allowed on campus. Say, smoking should be allowed on campus. This is a good, clear, strong thesis statement. This should give you enough information about brainstorming to begin working on your essay.